Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer at jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. Now, if you're listening to on our audio platforms, please give us a 5-star review, please download, and please subscribe. I am very excited today because this is a Jake's Take record-breaking interview. My next guest is talking to us from all the way in Australia. She is a dark Americana recording artist and a Spotify certified artist. Her name, please help me welcome the fabulous Lisa De Angelis to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much. What an introduction.
Thank you. So welcome, Lisa. And Lisa, congratulations on breaking a Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast record for the farthest distance I have had since interviewed. I'm based in Overland Park, Kansas, in the United States. So, Rio, Kansas. So, and now you're talking from Oz. So that is just, I think, almost 9,000 miles.
It's amazing, isn't it? Something like that. Oh my gosh, I can't even think what the conversion is, the miles to kilometers thing. We literally use a different measurement. That's how far away we are.
It's just amazing. But also, I want to say thank you so much for starting your day with me and helping me end my day.
A pleasure. Well, there we go. One ingoing and one outgoing. Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get started. So when did you get interested in performing, and how did that passion evolve into desire to pursue a career in the music industry?
So I suppose for me, it's sort of a funny thing that I didn't get started until a little later on. I wasn't one of those people who was like dancing around as a 5-year-old being like, wow, I just can't wait to do music. For me, it was sort of something that developed a bit over time, I suppose. I had my older sister played guitar when we were kids, and she was always kind of making me be like the backing person in all of her games, you know. And then as I got a little bit older, I realized I liked to sing. I started taking singing lessons in my teens and just kind of fiddled around in bands. My background's actually in punk music, so I played around in bands for a lot of years. I never really took it that seriously until I actually came to America. I was backpacking the US solo when I was 20, I believe. And I came overseas and I was just like, I'm ready to experience the world. And at that point, I was starting to think that I wanted to do music eventually. There was just like a bunch of things I wanted to do first, like traveling and, you know. And ultimately, I came over there. I met a man. I moved in with him. I had a bit of a relationship over there. Things went south. And when I came back home, I started writing these songs that were really personal about the experience that I had had, and you know, realized they weren't right for the band, that I wanted to kind of do my own stuff with them. And so that's kind of where it began. I actually took the songs at first to an open mic night to kind of trial them, see if they were any good. And the open mic night ended up being a competition, and I won that night and then won recording time at the next heat after that. And that's kind of where it began for me. Once I kind of had the bug, that was it.
And that's incredible, because the thing is, you never know what open night could bring. And like it could be a usual open night, but that was probably a big twist.
Yeah, very unexpected for me. I really thought I was just going to go and trial the songs and see if anyone reacted to them. You know, like, have I got something good here or not so much? And yeah, it ended up being a big twist for me. Yes, still to kick things off.
That's amazing, and that's amazing too. So, I gotta say, because you started punk, and now you headed, which is pretty dark, but now you are in alternate country or dark Americana. So, why switch?
So, do you know what's funny? I actually think the styles are really similar. Whenever I say that to anyone who's not in punk music, they're like, oh, is it? But for me, the process kind of went like punk music, and then Sydney, which is where I'm from originally, has an underground but a very distinct folk punk scene, which is almost like Americana music, I guess. It's basically like acoustic versions of punk songs. And a lot of the things that I like are there, like kind of catchy choruses, but really heavy feelings. And, I love a sad song. So this was kind of the jumping off point for me. I wrote a song that I thought maybe was a little bit more country, like traditional country than what I'd been doing. And basically submitted it to the Country Music Association of Australia. And they liked it, I guess, which is cool. And they accepted me into their, they call it the Academy of Country Music, which is sort of for like the next best and brightest, quote unquote, in Australian country music. And so I did a program with them, and yeah, through that program got somebody who was working, a girl named Hayley Marsden, who's a sort of a country artist here in Australia, saw me play, and then she offered me some opening spots on a tour she was doing, and it just kind of all went from there. I think once I found country music, like the overarching theme of country music, Americana specifically, I was like, this is what I've been searching for, I didn't know anyone who worked in that space, so it took a while to get there.
I gotta say, I was listening to your songs before we got on this call, and I gotta say, several of them remind me of like what would Lana Del Rey sing as she would be in this room.
Yeah, oh my God, I love that. I'm actually a big Lana Del Rey fan. I remember when she first broke, like years ago. I don't know if you remember, if you're a fan at the time, but like when video games came out and she was kind of popping up everywhere, and it was this really enigmatic thing, and the sounds were super orchestral. And at the time, I actually had already been working on an EP that we had put a bunch of strings on, and that EP ended up getting shelved because of label and studio politics that I had no control over. But when she started releasing music, I felt so much like synergy, like, oh my gosh, look, we sort of land on the same page. I think she's amazing. I think everything she does is brilliant. Thank you. That was a huge compliment.
You're so welcome. Like, especially like High on the Beach or Summertime Sadness, and not to mention her collaborations with The Weeknd, Lust for Life.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And Prisoner.
Her catalog is outrageous, isn't it? It's so beautiful.
Absolutely. But we're here to talk about you, Lisa, not Lana.
Yeah. Don't get me started on her. I won't stop.
All right. So besides Lana, who are some of the recording artists that influence your sound?
Interestingly, they're not always who you'd expect. I think there has been, more than anything, my tastes are visual. So my partner and I have a private studio in here in Brisbane where we live. And we basically co-produce these songs together, and it's this very collaborative, organic sort of process. But a lot of it actually comes, I think, from a visual place. So a combination of like Westerns and horror films, is really a big part of it. From a musical perspective, I would say Justin Townes Earle was like the big one for me to start with. I heard him on that first backpacking trip I think I was in Wisconsin, and I was driving in Wisconsin in the snow. First time I'd seen snow, and I was driving in it like a twit. Yeah, I hired a car, and I was driving out to see the House on the Rock, which is like this roadside attraction in Wisconsin. And I heard Justin Townes Earle come on the radio, and I remember just slamming on the brakes, being like, oh my God, what is this? Wrote his name down for later. So he's a big one. I love Townes Van Zandt. Obviously, thematically, I think there is a bit of crossover with Lana Del Rey, though, of course, like she's not a country artist, but there's definitely that. I really love everything that Carrie Ann Hurst does. Yeah, there's a bunch of people that kind of pull influences from different places. And also, surprisingly, I like all genres of music, but I think, there's little bits that pull from everywhere, but specifically I would say, yeah, Carrie Ann Hurst, LP, Justin Townes Earle, Townes Van Zandt, and also the Indigo Girls, who my sister is a huge fan of. So when I was growing up, we listened to a lot of their stuff, and they were sort of how I learned to harmonize, which is obviously a huge feature of what I do now. So probably can't forget them.
I think you have a great list. That is an incredible list of sounds, and then you got it from all over.
Yeah, little bits from everywhere.
Now, I know that you brought it up earlier in our conversation, but I want to get back to it because you said that you had that EP that you originally had with Shell because of studio politics and also label politics. So in addition to those two things, what have been some of the challenges that you faced, not just breaking into the Australian music industry, but also the international music industry, and how do you overcome those obstacles?
That's actually a huge one, especially Australia is like size-wise is a huge country, but we have a very small population. There is a little bit of feeling, I think, for me anyway, of like pushing a rock up a hill, that you sort of feel like even if you're to get a lot of exposure happening in Australia, that doesn't necessarily translate to US audiences because we're such a small country. So there is this strange kind of thing going on there, between trying to get known obviously in your own country and also trying to get people outside of that to know who you are so you can hopefully build some more sustainability in your career, I guess. The big thing for me, I think, has been finding the right team. And that comes back as well, I guess, to having that EP get shelved. We worked on that, I think, for 2 years. And then basically I think the master recordings got deleted. So I have it, but yeah.
That's just awful. I'm so sorry. 2
Thank
years
you.
and they got deleted. That is uncalled for.
Yeah, it really didn't have very much to do with me. I just kind of got caught in the crosshairs of what was already going on. But I basically have the songs. I'll probably release them as like a back catalog thing at some point, but we were never able to tour them because the bass files don't exist anymore. So that's been a big part of it, is just finding the right team, honestly. So and it takes a long time to build that up, I think, to sort of see what people are doing, who you think is charting a good path, working with some people that maybe you don't think do what you're kind of hoping for, finding the right collaborators. Really the big challenge for me, more than anything, has been just finding your people, like the right community. So I have a great distributor now in Czech Label Services, who are Australians based in Nashville, who have been doing such a beautiful job with sort of hitting both markets. My publicity company, Dead Horse Branding, same thing, Australians based in Nashville. So they've kind of got a big team now that's Americans and they're 2 original Australians. So I think a big part of it, honestly, has been finding people who understand both markets and then can help you put like a foot in each, because what you require in each market is not the same thing. It's really interesting.
And it's amazing because I gotta say, Keith Urban, 5 Seconds of Summer, it's basically without the late Olivia Newton-John, you cannot forget her, Tina Arena, and all those different, and all those, John Farnham, and all these incredible artists that you can go on and on for, because they paved the way for this. Because the thing is that I keep an eye on, it's not just American music I look at, but I look at Canada music, what's going on in the UK and in Australia, and I think you've got to keep an eye on those countries and those music.
I completely agree. There's actually so much talent in Australia, I think, as well, in a lot of ways, because we're so isolated from the rest of the world, in a lot of ways, and especially before the internet made connectivity such a big thing. There are very specific, it's almost like very fertile ground, I think, for creative people to kind of flourish. And then the catch is just kind of then, it really has to be a concerted effort to break into an international market, which is really interesting. Yeah.
And I gotta say, because the thing is, because of the internet, I was able to see The Voice Australia, and in Australia's Got Talent, and in X Factor Australia as well, and Australian Idol. And did you originally think about those shows? If not, why did you decide not to do them?
I've actually been invited to a couple. So I don't know. I don't know exactly how it works. But I think basically like there's sort of producers scouting beforehand. Not everybody, obviously, but sort of scouting beforehand for people they think might be a good fit for their season. And a couple of years ago, I got approached for, I think, 2 or 3. I won't name which ones because I don't know, is that a litigious thing? I don't know. But I got approached by 2 or 3, actually, all in the one season. And I went to one of the auditions and just actually didn't even end up doing the audition, which is really weird. I sort of thought that for what I do, I'll tell you why I didn't do the audition in a minute, but I sort of figured that for what I do, which is really like arty, I mean, I'm a trained singer, but that's, songwriting is my big love. And I was a bit concerned, I suppose, about not having as much control over that. Like, obviously, I think these are great jumping off platforms specifically if you are a singer or if you're a very mainstream sort of pop-driven singer or songwriter, then, you can do huge things with that. Whereas I felt for me, it would probably mean having to cut out a lot of the arty aspects that are really important to me, But I went to one of the auditions and basically just was like, I had never really planned to go ahead, I don't think, even if they had taken me on. I just thought it was a really interesting experience. I'd love to see what it was about, but ultimately I just felt like it wasn't really the right fit for me in the scheme of things. Like I said, I wanted to do some weird arty stuff and I didn't know if they'd be into it. I figured that I'm probably a bit more niche.
And I gotta give you a ton of respect for that, because the thing is, like, I'm looking at in this state of music right now, country and R&B are two artists I can name some of the legends that's been around for a long time: Willie Nelson, Stevie Wonder, Dolly Parton, Miss Diana Ross, Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, the late Kenny Rogers, all Winona, all those Reba. All those and Cher, like, the only pop I can think of is like Barbara and Cher and Bette Midler. Like, a majority of the people who have substantial long careers are basically in either R&B and country, because and possibly hip hop, because it feels very revealed. Because pop at this point in my humble opinion, it's like, I can't even name some of the artists besides Jonas Brothers and BTS that are on the charts right now.
That is a fantastic point. I've never really drawn that connection, but I think you're right. And I think a lot of it has to do with that in pop music, everything is very of the moment, right? Like, country music, the roots of it have been the same for a really long time, and R&B is probably sort of similar. I mean, obviously you have people like Lady Gaga who have been building a really amazing, interesting career for a really long time. But I think for the most part, pop music and what's working in pop music, what the audiences want to hear in mainstream music, I guess I should say, it's very of the moment. There's this real need to be constantly reinventing yourself, to be staying fresh, targeting new audiences. And on some level, as an artist, I mean, I think I certainly get that. I appreciate and I really respect experimentation. But also, most of my favorite artists, honestly, are the ones who are just like, this is my lane, this is what I do when I sort of am working within, I don't want to say the confines, but, basically this is the general gist of what I'm doing. And for me, I think that's really important especially as someone who cares so much about songwriting, in order to build, you know, a long-term career, it's really important to me to have like a plan and be true to that, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. So speaking of a plan and your music, let's talk about
Mm.
some of the songs that you have released, including, let's start with your latest hit, which I reviewed on Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, on the Jake's Take website, and I featured Lisa in my artist to watch category. So this is the reason why that song is the reason why we're here today.
Amazing. I really appreciate that. Also, that review just, I feel like there was some lines that you wrote in there about it being like one of the most haunting songs you've heard in like this year. I was like, I'm gonna cut that out and put that in like every press release I ever do for the rest of my life. So thank you.
You're so welcome. You are so
Yeah.
welcome. But it's true. That song, My Sister's Blue Suitcase, is very haunting. It's like, I never seen a dark, like I always do my best. Like when it comes to country, it feels like I'm listening to like a beer song, a love song, or like a twisted night song. But like that was so haunting. It was like I said earlier, Lana Del Rey meets country.
Thank you. Oh, huge compliment. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's sort of the stuff that I like. On one level, I like things with like a really frenetic sort of violin, almost like bordering on bluegrass. But my favorite, you know, my favorite songs I think are really cinematic. That's what I like. Really sweeping cinematic stuff. I wanted, you know, we put banjos in there, but also a horn section, like lots of layered vocals. It's basically it's kind of I think of this song as being like a love letter to my childhood broken home, I guess, and also to the OCD diagnosis that I got that came kind of later in life for me. And it made me think really, I suppose once I got that diagnosis, it was like the heavens opened up in some ways. I felt like so much of my character and, you know, these real like lows that I get, but also my fixations on things, all these things about my character suddenly made sense in a way that they never had before. I always felt like something was a bit defective, I guess. And getting this diagnosis and then being able to see how all the people, women and the mothers, my mom's side of my family, you know, going back generations, were probably affected by this same thing. But I'm the first one lucky enough to be born in to a generation that talks about these things or thinks about them, and made me feel really, I guess, first of all, really sad for that, you know, but also really aware of how every generation is parented by the one before, right? So we're just passing down these things, these traumas or whatever else, generation to generation. And I think about that a lot, actually, about like our imprint on the world, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sorry you had to deal with all that trauma. And guys, if you are dealing with any trauma or anything, or need a month or need someone to talk to, 988 is a very important number. It's a mental health helpline. 988. You'll find a link to this in our story. So back to the conversation.
Oh, amazing. Love that caveat. I really appreciate that.
You're so welcome. So let's talk about Tumbling
Yeah.
Back. Because
Yes.
as of this recording, has over 6,500 streams on Spotify.
Yes. So Tumbling Back was the first song we released from this forthcoming album. It basically, I've had a really strange run. I feel like whenever I put things together in my career path, people go, oh no, it's been like shelved EP. And then I managed to release 2 singles. So the first one was Tumbling Back. And the second one, Hunger Pains, which we'll get onto, I'm sure, in a minute. But I basically managed to release 2, and then I was hospitalized for the better part of a year. I'm completely deaf in my left ear now. I've only got one earbud in because my left ear is it's not very functional. I basically, woke up partially deaf one day and had a whole bunch of illness that went along with that. So it's been a strange ride. There's been a bit of a break between the first 2 songs and My Sister's Blue Suitcase for that reason. But Tumbling Back basically was the first song that my partner, Paul, and I recorded together or worked on together, which was amazing. And I wrote it about, I guess it's about, the experience of always chasing the feeling of wind in my hair for me. I have a really hard time letting the grass grow. I've backpacked on my own, as I mentioned, a bunch and done all these things. And it was a little bit about that, I suppose, about recognizing that sometimes there's a very fine line between adventure and recklessness, which is a lesson I've had to learn. But the very first time I played that song for anyone, actually, was for Steve Kilbey from The Church, if you're familiar with that band. They did Under the Milky Way and all these incredible songs. They're an Australian band, but an international band. And I was invited to do a tour with Steve Kilbey through the Australian outback during the COVID lockdowns, because, the small towns in regional Australia who rely on tourism obviously didn't have that anymore. So basically a team of us who were sort of one artist of each discipline, I guess, and then Steve and I as musicians, we went out with like a filmmaking crew into the outback and basically put on these impromptu shows at like small bush pubs along the way and that sort of thing. The very first time I played this song was out in the desert with Steve Kilbey, actually around a campfire, just pitch black with a campfire, all the Australian red earth, like that. If you Google like the Australian outback, that's what you see. And it was just this incredible defining moment. And I felt like so much of what I'd written about in the song came true in that moment. So it was a little bit of foreshadowing accidentally.
Wow, I gotta say, the Outback, I know I've seen that with Survivor, and then of course Oprah's Grand Visit, and also reading the history. I cannot believe that you and your team survived the Outback and its weather during one of the most dangerous times in our history, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it had just been me going out there by myself and hoping for the best, I don't know. But we're in one of those. I'm not a very outdoorsy person, but we had this fantastic tour bus, like the touring buses with like a queen size bed in the back and bunks. And so I need to be very clear that we stopped along the way, but we were by no means slumming it. We were very well taken care of.
Well, that's good. And as of this recording, I just got my second negative test of COVID before the second battle. So it was rough. Getting it twice is no joke, and I miss Janet Jackson. So
oh, I'm so sorry. I'm glad you got your negative test, but God, it's a horrible illness, isn't it? It really messed me up.
It is. It really messed me up twice. And like, it feels like that I also work at a nonprofit as well. So like you feel like because you're down in the most inopportune time, it definitely feels like you're letting your team down. You feel very guilty. There's a guilt surrounding it. And like, especially with like I gotta give my mom and dad credit because they were able to get me some meals and also some like groceries and everything. But it's also like, you can't it's like you feel there's a little smart guilt about it.
Yeah, it's a very strange, there's something very surreal about that, isn't it? That you're sort of just locked in. I mean, even now, it's a horrible illness. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So when I had it, like, obviously you just kind of stay away from everybody. But it is. It's true. And I think, though, the guilt, you have to remember that the guilt certainly needs to be outweighed by, like, doing your civil duty by, being out of the way, and also taking care of yourself is so important.
Absolutely. Thank goodness for Paxlovid and all, I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there's one more song we gotta talk about, and that is Hunger Pains.
Yes. So Hunger Pains, oh my God, poor Hunger Pains. It's kind of the forgotten middle child, which is a bummer because it's probably, I wouldn't say my favorite because, your favorite when you make art changes minute to minute, but it was sort of it was a deliberate, more arty song to release because Tumbling Back, I guess, did all the things that you'd hope for a first single. It got picked up by CMT, the country music channel over here in Australia. I know you guys have an American version, but it got picked up by the Australian CMT. got picked up by all the major country music radio stations over here. And then Hunger Pains was a deliberate departure from, something that sort of feels a bit more mainstream. And we did that very on purpose so that I wasn't feeling like, you're showing all aspects of your character. You're not getting boxed into one thing. Your character as an artist, I should say. But poor Hunger Pains, I literally, so the illness that took my hearing in my left ear is called labyrinthitis. And basically we released Hunger Pains, and then the video I think was meant to come out like a week after, or I can't remember the specifics. It was obviously a very hectic time in my life. We released Hunger Pains. We did this zombie Western music video that we were so proud of. It was really beautiful. I worked with some great filmmakers here in Queensland who are doing really interesting stuff. We did prosthetics. It was amazing. We made this incredible music video, this really cool cinematic atmospheric song that's really groovy. And then literally, I think the day before the music video was meant to drop. So we went song, few days in between, meant to have a music video. I think the day before the music video was released, I literally, as I said, I woke up deaf in one ear, and I was sort of like, something weird is going on to my partner, like something's not right. And we thought maybe I had an ear infection or something. And it turned out what I actually had was, I think it must be similar. Did you see Justin Bieber had that thing a little while ago where where the nerve in his ear was affected? Basically, that's what happened to me, but with a different result. So I basically got, they think it's like the common cold or chicken pox or something, but it's basically like you get a virus, and instead of attacking where it normally attacks, it attacks your inner ear. So you can imagine the host of issues that creates, like vertigo so severe I couldn't stand up. I was in hospital. I had like 9 months of rehab. And it was brutal, but poor Hunger Pains. You spend all this like time and money and love and energy, and you think that you're creating something that you're really excited about. I didn't get to do just about anything with it, unfortunately, because it was literally about 9 months before I was well enough to function. So it's a great song. If you're listening to this, go hear it. It's very cool.
Absolutely. Make sure you go and listen to it after our conversation. After
the conversation.
I gotta say, you are so brave. I am so in awe of your strength. I am so in awe of determination. You, Lisa, are just incredible.
Oh gosh, that's so kind. Thank you. I think, I feel like this is all there is for me. I just love music. I love art. And when I went to that first hearing test, and they said, and literally hearing test, I was strapped to a wheelchair because the vertigo was so bad that I couldn't sit up on my own. And they brought me in for the hearing test, and like they may as well have done it on my elbow for all I could hear in my left ear. And then they were like, right, so you've got, profound hearing loss in that ear, and it's likely permanent. And my partner and I were both just like, I'm sorry, what? The idea that this happens is just insane. But from the get-go, it was just like, okay, well, let's do everything, because I'm not letting this affect anything. I gig full-time. This is my full-time job. So I just learned to use in-ear monitors in my right ear so I can hear what's going on more easily. And, where there's a will, there's a way. You just figure it out.
Awesome. So we got to start winding down our conversation, because I'm nervous that our connection, because of our distance, is going to wipe out our conversation. So there's 2 more questions I got to ask you.
Yes.
One of them is social media. So what are your favorite social media apps that you can connect with your fans?
So I'm on just about all of them. Some of them get more love than others. My absolute favorite is Instagram. Still, I love Instagram. I've just discovered TikTok. I've just found the corner of TikTok that I get. It takes a while for the algorithm to figure you out. So I've just started on TikTok as well. My handle for Instagram and TikTok is at Lisa De Angelis, like DE Angelis. I'm like 5 feet tall. I look like a Disney character. You got to work with what you've got. De Angelis. I also am on Facebook. I do quite a lot of posting on there. Pretty much Instagram's my favorite, but I'm on Facebook as well. You can find me on there by searching Lisa De Angelis or doing facebook.com/Lisa De Angelis Music.
Wonderful. And one more question. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Besides those incredible social media channels, where can my audience find your music? And for those of you who are in Australia, and hopefully soon, if she gets it internationally, where can I find your shows?
So I have a website. My website is iamlisadeangelis.com. All of my show dates are listed on there. If you jump on Spotify, obviously Spotify, Apple Music, all the streamers were on there. Spotify, if you're a Spotify user, also will have the show that is closest to you. I don't know how they've done that. It's very clever. But otherwise, show dates are available on my website, iamlisadeangelis.com.
Awesome. So, guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and Spreaker. It's the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, JACOBELYACHAR. Now, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. JACOBELYACHAR. And Lisa, just to let you know, jakes-shake.com is turning 12 this year.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's huge. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. And also, guys, you can find that music review that I did for My Sister's Blue Suitcase on jakes-shake.com. Lisa, I am thrilled that technology brought us together, and I'm so honored and thrilled that you took time on your schedule to begin your week with me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's a perfect way to start a Monday morning. And I hope you get to have some time off after this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.